I can, I will, I am. It's one of those things where it's a mindset component, and it is a situation where we have to understand and stand up for ourselves before we can actually portray and be the person that we want to be, and then in balancing this entire act of our lives and work. And are they actually separate, or how do they get together? What I'm going to do today is obviously we know emergencies always happen, but we're going to go through some of the things that we can predict as much as possible to minimize the impact that we have of these emergencies. So let me get into my little system here. And of course, it's now not working. Come on. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Okay. So as we go through the process of I can, I will, I am, again, it's a mindset. So let's start with the opportunity of I can. As we look at the different things that encompass our world, we know we have the combination of work, life, and ding, 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 it's the self-care. Because with those high stress levels, we know if we don't fill our own cup first, there is no way for us to share that cup with someone else. So we have you in the middle of this whole mix, and we know that as time comes along, that things shift, work takes over, life takes over, and you and that self-care end up in the tiniest portions of your normal day. And this is a dangerous equation. So we realize that we're always talking about time management. How do you upkeep your time management? Yet we also know that's a fallacy. It's actually a you management. We cannot manage time. Time is what it is, and it doesn't change in the quantum physics. Although I do believe time travel is possible, but until we're able to access that, we're kind of stuck with having to manage us. So it is a whole fact of managing you instead of trying to manage the time. And we all know that we have one life. We have 1 year, 1 decade, whatever your one is. And when we break that down, it comes down to 365 days or 366 days, depending on the 4 years, right? Broken down into 12 months, which then goes into our 52 weeks and breaks down into 7 days a week, as well as 24 hours a day. And bam, now we're into our 60 minutes an hour, 60 seconds per minute, and break it into every little iota and bit byte you like after that. The reality is, we're sitting there looking at this entire universe of opportunity, and that is there. So when we think of the mindset of our opportunities, what can we do? That's when the dream state comes into play. Now, the dream state might be, how do I get the next person hired? How do I complete this contract or assess the analyzed reports that are coming through? How do I prepare for the board meeting? Or the dream I can could be something like, how can I take that vacation I've always wanted to? How can I get a new car? How can I get my kids through college? How can I be the person that I want to be? And we then have to recognize that the I cans, in order for us to be more realistic, go into more of an I will. And this is where I translate the difference. The I can is the dream, the mindset. The I will is the more strategic component of building this into a proper journey pathway that is most likely going to fulfill your dream, your vision, your I am to come. So when we look at our moments that we have, we kind of want to categorize them. And if you look at the Career CNX app, you'll see that there already is that categorization for you. Whether you use Career CNX or you have your own system, I really encourage for you to understand, where does your time get broken into, and having a more conscious awareness of what it is and where it fits into the dynamic. And this becomes important later as we begin scheduling and putting those puzzle pieces together. So categorize your moment. For example, how much time are you spending on something that's revenue driven? If you're an independent consultant or you have your own company, where's that billable hours? And also, if you're in the company and you have to look at the revenues driven, how much time of your time is spent in providing those revenue hours, or getting your staff to be the revenue hours? How much time is dedicated to your own career development? to networking and getting to know more people, for household, family, any of these pieces, the more you're able to truly identify and categorize where your time is spent, it's going to help loosen all the stuff that you have out there and make it a little easier to handle. Picking up my daughter from childcare, right? Well, that's family. Working out in the mornings, that's health. Going to have a coffee meeting with a potential client or a potential collaborative partner, or meeting with someone who might be a great contribution to your organization. That's a networking. It goes in any possible way. And we'll go into this a little bit more. The examples that I'm going to bring up, I'm using it more as an example of breakouts. You will have your own. And again, if you want to use what's already there, the Career CNX app, you could just enter it into those and make it really easy for you to be able to monitor. So if we go through, let's just look at the first one, career, your revenue or your income. Okay, where is all that time going that directly leads to the money transaction coming towards you or to your company? But this is about you. So I do want to translate it to your personal revenues for a moment. As we look at all the hours we put in and fit the revenue or your income into your life, how much time will you need to spend in that CEO chair in order to get the income that you want? When I was at the nonprofit, it was that moment that I realized I needed to say goodbye to that position. Beforehand, I was already having conflict. And what I ended up doing is transitioning from a full-time position into a part-time position. And I was very fortunate in that my CEO was able to work with me on this and allow me that opportunity. But I had already recognized in my own mind, these are the hours that I needed in order to fit my work together with my life. And to do this, there are some realism factors, right? How much do you need to make by hour? And so, for example, when I work with my clients, this is a simple equation. It's a spreadsheet that I put together. How much do you need to make per year? How much do you want to work a year or a week? How many holidays do you want to take? Do you want to take 2 weeks? Do you want to take a 4 week? Do you want to do traditional 5 holidays? Whatever. And then it actually you calculate out how much do you actually need to be making an hour and then translate that into your salary, right? But if you don't know this, then it's almost impossible for you to drive what is your income needs or how much do you need to work in your schedule. So I know this is a flip side because usually we think of, well, I'm taking this job and I know this job is going to have this many hours invested. And those of us that are in the executive roles, what do? We give it our all because that's how we're going to get those raises. That's how we get the promotions. Need to look at it from a different perspective of how much do you want to work and can you work within that time frame of what you have allotted to you. And we'll go into that a little bit later. Make sure you're taking care of you and your goals. So we've got, in this example, we've got the business development is the other component of like, okay, if I'm going to use and I've got revenues, how much time am I spending in my revenue or income? How much time am I spending in business development? How much time am I going to be spending in content? In this case, content could be anything such as contract writing or writing marketing material. It just depends on what you're doing. Again, this is just an example. And then move on. Administrative. How much time are you spending doing payroll? How much time are you spending with any of these other pieces that you can allocate that category of your time? And free time. So what does free time mean? Well, free time in this instance could be, well, how much time do I want to use for those emergencies that might come up? You have a disgruntled client that you need to be working with. So that's not an appointment initially scheduled. So how do you handle that? You've got a conflict in your work or one of your supply chain distributions went south. So that free time is something that you can initially put all the way around. You could also consider, well, On a personal level, my free time, that means when I don't have anything in my calendar. It's a time where I can call a friend and say, hey, you want to go see a movie? Let's go to the mountains today. Or, you know what? I'm working on a book. I'm going to use these times as free time. Every once a week, I'm going to spend an hour because I have nothing else allocated. I'm dedicating that to my book. And then there's all a big one that we tend to forget. We want to remember that we reserve time for how do we create those visions and make that motivation, re-inspire ourselves, the North Star objectives, strategizing in how to build this whole system and that free time. And then ultimately, the me time. And this is where we go awry far too many times, because when we have that me time or we don't have that me time can make or break a relationship. Redefining urgencies. We had talked about these components of these fires keep coming in. So there's a component that we need to drive in. What is a want versus a need? The want is something that we truly, truly want to do, right? And for any of you that read, and Eric, thank you for this tip, but there's like the 10x is better than 2x, and Dan Sullivan, he's there, and he defines also the want versus the need. And that's a different definition. In this case, I want you to know that what you want is truly in your heart, and that is your goal, your North Star. But what do you need to do to get to it? What is your vision? And what are those steps to get you towards that vision? Because the more you understand your want and those needs to do, it will help get rid of all the clutter, that space junk that was out there, those boxes floating, and releasing that guilt. And this is applied to your work. This is applied to your personal life and what is your fitting life around your work. This is applied to your family, your health. What are those things? What are those objectives? And now for the fires, it's really defining when there's an emergency versus urgency versus, well, I'll do that later, or this is not something we're going to deal with at all. Okay. Think a path of an upset client that you may have or customer that you may have. If they have an emergency, that is something that is in your wheelhouse. It is included in your contract that you will take care of this. So if you have, for example, a travel issue and the client and one of your staff can't get in because they need to install a piece of equipment, and otherwise it's not going to happen. This is an emergency and you've all accepted. Everyone on your team has accepted this is something that has to get done. There is no and, if, or but about it. This is an emergency. Great. All efforts and energy is focused on that emergency. Now, an urgency is something that's like, yeah, this is really something we have to keep at the top of the level. As soon as we get all these other aspects done, then we'll approach this a situation. For example, if you have a very important meeting that you have to complete, because this is about, let's say, a contract negotiations, as soon as you are done with that contract negotiation meeting, then you will move on to this little urgent issue that came up. Later is not forgot. It's put on the back burner and needs to have a task assigned to it or something, or goals, or whichever, reminders in the systems, whether it be someone that you're wanting to collaborate with in the future, some of the contacts that you may have here, actually, even like Career CNX in this app. These are those ones that maybe you say that as later, but you have a timeline by which you want to have that addressed. If you just keep putting it for later without that benchmark, again, use the exact levels, you understand the importance of having these follow-ups. Then there's the never, going back again to the choice and the belief. If it's not going to get done, quit just like, oh, you get this person who keeps calling you and you're like, call me in a month, but you have no real interest in engaging. Just be transparent. In all the trainings of communications that I'm doing, and when I'm connecting individuals with their new careers and their new goals and so forth, there's a huge understanding that be transparent. What's the worst thing that can happen in your mind? If you know what that worst thing is and you already have addressed it ahead, then there we are. So in our society, this never is the hardest thing for us to do. And for when we say no, let it equal no. And for us to have that and have a guilt-free, it works out so much better in the long run. And I'm seeing some net shake and some nodding heads with us, that it's so easy for us to just, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but it could be a potential opportunity. No would be no. Wouldn't you appreciate it if you think that, hey, this might be a job that I could take? And if they just tell you no versus stringing you along on all these interviews and they really had no interest in hiring you, they're actually going to do an internal hire anyway. So transparency. So let's go back to this box, okay? Let's have that represent our day and the tasks within. In reality, we have our mindset that we're just going to keep stacking things on top of our day, or we're going to just put more in till we're bursting in the seams. But we know that actually, in reality, physics does not allow this. The physics law is there's only one thing that can be in one place at one time. That is law, physical fact. So in this room, whatever that capacity may be, perhaps it's your 8-hour workday, perhaps it is 1 hour of your free category time. Each time you have one of these rooms set aside for you, recognize you are absolutely in control of what goes into there. Regardless of whatever fires come up, whatever gets thrown on you, you are in full control. This is assuming you don't drive and somebody sidelines you, but these are the things. And in our work, when we allocate where we are putting our efforts, we are in control. Because remember, no means no, urgency or emergency, urgency, later, and never. Full control. So when we consider then our time management, I prefer to call it time mapping, because all it is being able to put all these jigsaw puzzle pieces together in order to make it a viable opportunity. And I translate this into timely versus transferable, in which case, is this something that you could have at one point that you could shift to another date or time, or does it have to stay here? Example, you have a doctor's appointment. You've already been setting this appointment and waiting for it for 3 months. That's a timely one. You are not going to be transferring that around. On the other hand, perhaps you have a coffee date with someone, in which case it was a collaborative effort. Let's just find out. Again, with the transparency, saying, you know what, something has come up. I have something I need to continue. I need to have a conversation with this potential opportunity. Can we move that to Thursday at 2 p.m. instead of our intended Wednesday at 9 a.m.? That's a transferable. Consider every task that you're doing as a little block of time into this box that we're filling for our time. And this is then adding the junk to that is fixed or flexible blocks. By this, I mean, is a coffee date 1 hour? Or is it something that you could flex and increase? Look at our personal relationships. How many of you go through the dating apps or whichever, or remember if you're married now, happily remember you had your first date with your significant other and it was not an hour. It lasted a little longer because it was of benefit to you. By allocating in your box of time, there's a flux. If one increases, another by physics has to decrease. So that's when then you put this timely and transferable blocks, approaching your fixed versus flexible, and now putting the jigsaw together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that actually moves. Does that make sense? And then as we put these jigsaw puzzles together, here's an example in Career Connections, right? We had the goals that we had put together. We know what we want to do. How much time was it going to take to participate in a chamber a month event? How much time is it for going into these, for example, here, the setup of your system, your IT? How much time do you want to or can you allocate to such? If you have appointments booked from 8 to 5 and you have a gap from 12 to 1, which hopefully is your lunch, can you flex any, or do they have to stay rigid in order for it all to fit together? So as you build your network and as you're expanding your horizons on opportunities within this tribe, then have that opportunity of your own personal growth and allocating these together. So just an example. So we're going to do another quick breakout. Let me see how much more. I know there, how many, just quick rounds of how many have to leave at 9?
I think just one more, Ingrid. I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep going then.
We're on track.
All right. So on this chat, then, if you want to just kind of put in some examples of what if you think about your plan for today or what happened yesterday, pop in the chat a little bit as to some examples of what you've done in your tasks that you feel are a timely one that has to be done. Like if you have a workout session every Thursday at 7 a.m., that's timely. Or if you have something else that's transferable and could move around, just kind of put in chat what you think. What is something that's transferable or timely? And then another one where you're like, I hadn't thought about this, but I definitely need to spend 1 hour a day in order to do something, or this is how much I allocate to my new contacts, my new introductions, versus something that could flex. So I'm going to just kind of have you pop into your chat. Let's see what those are coming out as. No worries. Bye, Anthony and Dan. Yep, exactly, Jeanette. If you are able to fix some of those conversations, you'll have a lot more time. People are more than happy to steal time away from us and usurp our time. So when we set those guidelines, that's what helps. Transparency. When you meet, letting people know. When I have meetings, I usually will say, so what would you like to accomplish at the beginning of my meeting? Because then I know with the time allotted, have I gotten that done or not? And sometimes we even finish early because we got that accomplished. Yes, auditors, I would agree. That is flexible. So Dane, then when you have those times where the auditor comes into play, do you recognize that you can't have something right after when they come in? So you have to have that flex. Whatever is filled at the after point, where do you go with that? Client meetings, self-care, transferable. Yeah, to some degree. So here's one more thought. If you're finding that a lot of your appointments, those are tasks or activities that you've put in your calendar, if you're finding a high percentage of them are starting to bounce into transferable, I would have you reassess what your value is to those points, and putting a little bit more choice into an assessment into where these priorities are, because a lot of transferables being moved all over the place is there's probably room for improvement there. Okay, so we had some timely appointments just by people coming on and hopping off at 9. So congratulations to them as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on a little bit more. And this is kind of like a part 2 section to help us stay on track so we don't have some of these transferables. And it's the delegation. So as the executive level and as the C-suites and so forth, you probably have a lot more experience in delegation than most individuals. So this might be more of a review, but I just encourage you to really kind of become more conscious of some of the things that you may be doing naturally and where there might be even more room to delegate even further of what you had not considered. So the big part about delegation is that we have to identify what are the roles that everyone is playing in what we're handing off or what we are being handed off to us. Making sure that we are trained, that they are trained, that they have all the tools necessary in order to complete that task. If that's not done in advance, everyone is spinning and rolling their wheels, and it ends up being a mess. And a lot of the expectations that were hopefully set up in the first place will not be met. So make sure that the training is there, that is correlated to that particular role, that the expectations are laid out at the onset, who's doing what, where, why, when, and why. Communication, we all know that that's critical. And the consistency is a big, big part. And that's where much of when people start micromanaging, that the consistency becomes thwarted in every different direction, because when a micromanager comes into place, they keep making little changes and that trust doesn't come into play. That's why the security gates are most important, so that if there is a mistake made or that we can relinquish, so that we know if something goes wrong, these are going to be the steps thereafter. That really is what creates the successful delegation. Activate and following, making sure that you have recognized systems and that everyone feels empowered. Without that empowerment, you'll lose the person that you just spent all that time training and you start all over again. So be sure that people feel empowered, that they are trained, they feel comfortable, and that they're set up for success. I break down the successful delegation planning into 3 phases. There are 3 P's, so to speak. So there's the planning component, in which case, figuring out what do you even need, and whether that goes into your North Star or some other specific goals. I would suggest this is actually more into the objectives. That I think that's what we usually use when we're doing our masterminds here in Career CNX, is what are those actual things that have to get done in a short-term basis, so that is this something that will make sense and be reasonable to go with? Who and how is going to do that? So what's the actual strategic plan in making it work? Then there's the let's do this. I call it the step back and grow process. The planning is more like the stop. Let's get our inventory, get the plan. The performing is the step. You've already done your strategy. The perform is the actual go and grow. So what is that? The direct contact, so that each individual who has been assigned to do it is moving forward. There's that clear intent. And when we delegate, how often is it that we may throw a piece of paper on something on a desk and say, hey, can you call this client and let them know I'll be a few minutes late? And you didn't pay attention that the person you asked to delegate this to is on the phone. This is in an in-office setting, obviously. And then you get there and they're like, oh, we were wondering where you were. And you're like, well, I told so-and-so to call you, but there wasn't that eye contact and an acceptance that this is what I'm going to do. When we're talking about getting reports completed, proposals done, and we break down the different portions of these massive projects that you're working on, when you don't have someone understand and accept they're going to do that, it's a failure set up before. So afterwards, it's kind of like a postmortem. What worked, what didn't work? Follow up, get those safety gates in order if it didn't work. And let's like, what can we do to make it better? And always, we want to celebrate and appreciate those around us that made it work. When I say rinse, repeat, I don't just mean rinse and repeat, like hit the button. Rinsing, repeat means let's look at what worked, what did not. And if it worked, holy mackerel, keep doing what's working. And if it doesn't, then at that point, let's go back. What's the plan? What do you need? Is it reasonable? Perhaps there was something that was a little bit excessively expected, whether you're putting too many tasks on one individual and they can't keep up, so that you can have a more relevant and successful outcome from that. All right. So IT is always fun. So when we look about fitting life again around your work, and we want to look at the strategies of mapping your time, we have a foundation we've built. We know where we are now. I hope you know where you are. Give yourself an opportunity to revision, rebring out what is again that North Star. Think of it to yourself on a regular basis, so that you can become more succinct and now address the analytical approach of strategizing to fulfill that. And we want you to embrace those wants, right? Remember the value, choice, and belief. Now that you can strategize what needs to happen in order for you to reach those goals. Understand those moments in your life and where they fit in the various categories, so that in an analytical, strategic manner, you can now align those as your timely transferable, fixed flexible, those time blocks, like this little Rubik's cube that you can just move it around. And adding to that fact that as we look at the Rubik's Cube on the top right, you've got the yellow, white square on the left and then the red, blue square right next to it. Those could meld into one. And that's how you have an expanded component. These blocks of time, we only have 24 hours in the day, the time that it takes for us to rotate once. Nothing can change that. We cannot control our environment, but we can control how we respond to that. So as you get more cognizant of your own self and let go of things through this delegation component, this is how you can really enhance your own me time and then fit your life around your work. And that is what brings it all into the I am. We have all the thought process and all the mindset and the strategy and the developing and the forming. That's all futuristic. When it's real in your heart and it's happening in your moment, that is what transforms every opportunity into the I am. It's what you're doing, receiving, getting to do now. It isn't a magical thing. It's just pure awareness and consciousness to yourself. So I really appreciate you having joined me this morning and embraced and participated in the workouts that we were doing, the breakouts. If you would like to know a little bit more about the time management and how to apply some of these aspects, I do have a book that I published. It's called I Can, I Will, I Am. It is available on my website, ingridpyka.com, as well as on Amazon. And we also have it as an ebook. So if you want some more on that, we have the activities and it goes a lot more in depth into each one of those components. So otherwise, you're always welcome to reach out to me directly. I'd love to meet you and get to hear your challenges and most of all, your successes. As we talked about the mindset and such, this was one of my visions, and it's so exciting that it's come to reality. And I'd love to invite you all, if you're interested, in applying this and much, much more in depth. Right after Thanksgiving this year, we have a 5-day all-inclusive trip retreat in South Africa. We'll be living in a 4-star lodge for 5 days. We go through the process. I'm partnering with some amazing ladies from South Africa into the mindset, mind, body, whole wellness, and then bringing that into the step-by-step strategic format. What is the transformation in your life, your career, whatever it is, to go from there? It's all inclusive. It's right there. We're really excited to have this launch. We already have some great reports. It is limited. We are approaching our limit, but there's still some seats available. And if you want to know more about it, you can either go to the QR code or just go to the www.globaladventuresretreats.com and go from there. So going from there, just to stay on a timely approach, I am always here to serve you. If you want to reach out to me, my contact information is right there. And thank you so much, Patrice, not only for letting me have this opportunity, but also for you. You have really put so much value into everything that you're doing, commitment, creating this entire community in Career CNX, creating the tools that we can access, providing a platform for great people to connect as well as to learn and coach and be coached. So for those of you that are not familiar, this is for the deaf community, this is a round of applause. Let's go ahead and all join in for thank you, Patrice, woohoo, for everything you've done.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. Awesome presentation. So hopefully we'll have a video of this ready next week. So all of you who are registered for the call will get access to the video. In case you want to revisit some of those points, I know Ingrid covered a ton of stuff today. Highly recommend the book. I actually got to preview the book and give input on that book, which was such an exciting thing to be a part of the process. So thanks, everybody. And we're going to go ahead and check out a little bit early. We got done a few minutes early. So we're going to leave it at that. I know. Well done, Ingrid. You got it all tied in there. Hopefully you guys made some great connections today. And if you have any questions, obviously, or introductions, etc., give me a shout out on email or a call. I'm happy to introduce you to Ingrid and others that you may have connected with today that you didn't get their contact information. You know, that's what we're all about here at Career CNX, connecting you. So let us help.